If the world ended due to zombies being everywhere, what would happen if you went back? This is the Comicstorian channel, where we take some of your favorite trade paperbacks and single issues and we break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then we read them dramatically back to you. All alterations of the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Today we're going to be doing the DCeased sequel, DCeased 2, but as a full story. For those who don't know what a full story is, here at the Comicstorian channel, we normally bring you a video that features 3 to 6 different issues of your favorite comic book. Well, that happens over the course of a year or 6 months, sometimes even 4 years, so eventually it's really hard for you to find where the story begins and where it ends. So every Monday, we bring you a full story video, a combination of videos that were produced over a long span of time into one video, and today we're going to be doing the sequel to DCeased. So the way it works is, in DCeased, there was a series of zombies that took over the world thanks to the anti-life equation, and then most of our heroes that survive had to leave. Well, 5 years later, if they get a distress signal, what are they going to do? That's today's tale, and I hope you enjoy. They lost. The heroes of Earth fell, and along with them, the planet. They lost so much that they didn't think that they had anything left to lose. But they were wrong. John Constantine sits in the Oblivion bar, a drink in his hand, spending his days searching for the living amongst the dead. His nights drinking next to the ashes of his friends. John glances at the shoebox next to him, lifting his drink. I mean, there's probably other ashes in there too, but I reckon it's mostly you I scrapped up, Chaz. It's hard to tell one ash from another. They're not exactly snowflakes, he tells his long, dead friend. Suddenly, a portal opens up at the end of the bar, and Zatanna walks through. She looks at John, telling him that the world is depressing enough without him drinking alone. And John looks up with a sad smile. I'm not alone, Z. I'm never alone, he tells her. He looks around at the ghosts surrounding him, those of our fallen heroes. Big Barda, Mr. Miracle, Mr. Terrific, Blue Beetle, and Booster Gold. They all share a drink with John, having sacrificed themselves to save this planet. Wonder Woman reaches for Cyborg's head as the hero looks up into the sky. He decided to stay, believing that since the virus originated with him, it would be safer for him to stay behind. Let the survivors survive. Let them get off of the planet. He was wrong. The blighted Amazon rips his head from his body, throwing it away. It was 5 years later that he found something inside of his head that shouldn't have been there. A tracking device. Left by his friend, we'll say. He boosted the signal, sending it out into the void of space. He sent out a cry for help to a new world. To Earth 2. Main ship firing! John yells as Dinah and Cassie fly behind him. Dinah manages to use her Green Lantern ring to shield the planet from the attack as John and Cassie attack the guns. Got it, John, Dinah tells him. As the others rip the guns away, John reminds them to just disable the ship. They aren't trying to hurt anyone. I know, John, Cassie tells him. Batman, where are you? Inside, Damian Wayne slips through the corridors of the ship, telling John that he is just outside the throne room. All right, just remember, we want to talk to them, John reminds his friend. Sure, Damian agrees, leaping forward, knocking out one of the alien guards with a powerful kick. Was that a thud? Nothing, Damian tells him. Sounded like a boot to the face. Stupid super hearing, Damian whispers. I heard that. Damian moves in, dropping 2 more of the alien guards, while John reminds them that they are trying to broker peace with these people. That'll make it a lot more difficult if you take out the king's spleen and show it to him, John explains. These aliens have spleens? Damian asks, beginning to cut through the final door into the king's throne room. How should I know? You want me to find out? The door collapses and Batman enters the throne room. The king watches, flanked by 2 more guards, as he tells Batman that they have not won this war. Oh please, if we wanted to, we could have wiped out your fleet in seconds. This isn't a war, it's barely even a fight, Batman tells him. Oh, we'll give you a fight, the king threatens, brandishing a fiery spear. Sure, do you have a spleen? Damian asks, pulling free 2 batarangs, and in a blur, John is standing between them, trying to calm the situation. He smiles, asking to bring the king to their leader. On Earth 2, in the remains of the great arcs that brought them through space, the remnants of mankind have created their homes. President Lois Lane stands before the king, expressing how they mean no harm to his people, that they have merely come to this world for sanctuary. Batman stands close, but he's interrupted by a message from Alfred. Your briefcase is beeping, sir. It seems to be beeping in Morse code, Alfred tells his young charge. staring down at the case that was the last gift from Bruce Wayne. Later, the new Justice League stands in the new Hall of Justice, Damian leaning over the table, explaining that the beep is the tracker that his father left inside of Cyborg. So it could just be beeps, Green Arrow offers, coming up behind Damian, but Batman shakes his head, explaining, the Morse code is the letters J and L. Cyborg's calling for the Justice League, he explains, but Oliver isn't convinced. Maybe it's a trick. Maybe he's infected and the anti-life equation is literally trying to lure us back to Earth. Oliver tells him, believing that they have a good thing on this planet. Hardly anything is trying to kill us here. The others all begin to argue, but Oliver finally tells them that they should just call a vote. Ollie's right. We should vote, Dinah agrees, with Ollie telling her that it wasn't his main point. But the vote passes. John stands in front of his mother later, explaining, you're going back. She says simply, John nodding, telling her that the Green Lantern Corps will protect Earth 2 while they're gone. You don't think it's too much to risk? Lois asks him. I think a friend is calling for help, Mom, John explains. Lois puts her hand out, touching her son's cheek. Come straight back. We've lost enough, Superman, she tells him. And he once more explains that he isn't comfortable being called that. So stop earning it, she tells him. Meanwhile, Oliver and Dinah are gearing up for the mission, with Oliver once again expressing how he doesn't like this. You voted, she tells him. Do you think I was gonna keep my hand down when all the kids were in on it? He asked. She smiles, telling him that he should stay on Earth 2, that she'll be back. No, we should stay together. And alive. Wait a minute, did you just try to bench me? Oliver asks. I'm formidable, Pretty Bird. I killed the undead king of the sea while he was controlling a kraken. He reminds her. She smiles as he tells her once again. Oliver is quick to point out that she may have the ring, plus her scream. And then you have that sword that can kill a god. He begins, but she smiles, pulling free Wonder Woman's kryptonite-forged magical sword, asking if he wants it. She kneels, offering him the blade, and he snatches it from her hand. Fine, I'll hold the sword, he tells her. Pretty sure you don't hold a sword like that, you wield it, she tells him. Fine, I'll wield the sword. And finally, the two of them pull each other tight. Pretty Bird, I like it here. Promise we'll come back, Oliver tells her. I promise I'll bring you back, Dinah tells him as they embrace. Later, the Justice League arrives on the edge of the Green Lantern quarantine zone to discover Kilowog on guard duty. Yo, you better be careful down there, posers. I'd feel pretty bad about destroying you all, he tells them, telling them that he's guarding the Earth and the sun. Your dad's still eating a star, kid. And that's when we see the original Kal-El still sitting in the sun. Suddenly, the rings begin to chime with a proximity warning and the Lanterns throw up a shield, but the projectile smashes through them without slowing, and Crypto rushes up to John, the super pup's tail wagging at super speed. You know this creature? Kilowog asks, still ready to fight. Yeah, he's family. Inside the spaceship, Damian is smiling. All right, good puppy reunion. Can we get back to the distress signal? Cyborg's waiting. So a short time passes and the group finds the remains of Cyborg and Dinah steps forward. Vic, Cyborg, can you hear me? She asks. Leaning down, the head is quiet, so Cassie steps forward holding her lasso of truth. If you can speak, this will make it happen, she tells them. They drape the lasso around Vic, and the head seems to come to life. He looks at his friends, recognizing them, and John steps forward. You called the Justice League, Cyborg. We came, he tells them. Vic's words are broken as he tries to speak. He stutters. Overhead, Hawkgirl flies, looking at the horde of Blighted that are running towards them. Hey, we have like some monstrous hordes of zombies coming in, maybe 10 minutes away. Monstrous hordes are about the worst kind of horde. We should move, Ollie tells the group. The group begins to move, picking up Vic's head and body as they begin to move towards Ivy's Gotham jungle, and Crypto begins to growl. It's okay, boy, we have time, John tells the dog. She's here. She's always here. Vic struggles from his place in Cassie's arms. Dinah's ring suddenly pings with a proximity alert, and Batman's ship explodes in the sky. On board, Damian calls for John's help, and Superman is there, lowering the remains to Earth, saving everyone. But all around them, the smoke and the debris is showering the group. Dinah! Oliver yells as a haze of bloody fingers begin to wrap around his face. Dinah! I'm so sorry, Pretty Bird! He tells her as Wonder Woman slashes his body, cutting into his face and chest. Ollie! Dinah screams, her canary cry mixing with the lantern ring to push Wonder Woman off of the man that she loves, drawing blood. Dinah flies forward, grabbing the sword off of Oliver's back. As she rushes Wonder Woman, Hawk Girl's mace smashes into the Amazon's nose, staggering her, and Dinah stretches out with a massive green hand, smashing her flat into the ground. Vic struggles to speak again, asking them to stop, but Cassie can't hear him, asking him to repeat it. I heard him! John yells, rushing forward in a blur of super speed. Dinah! Dinah, don't! We can save her! He yells as Dinah launches forward, bringing the magical sword down for the killing blow. And John, he dives into the way, the blade piercing his back, stabbing through Wonder Woman. Dinah! There's a cure! He gasps. Roy Harper turned, peering into the destruction around him that was Chicago with a set of binoculars. They're coming, he whispers, turning back to the compound beneath him, shouting for the survivors that he has protected to get inside. Leaping from the building, he uses his crossbow to slide down a zip line and onto the pavement below. Mr. Arsenal? Are the monsters going to get us? The little girl asks, clutching her teddy bear with a scared look in her eyes. But he just smiles at her. It'll be okay, Gracie. We'll wait them out. Like always. I won't let them reach you. Go inside. He tells her. Someone shouts for his attention, pointing into the sky, and Roy looks up with a curse hovering on his lips for the briefest of moments. The blighted heroine fire descends from the sky, launching green fire from her fingertips that engulfs Roy's body. Gracie screams as the hero dies, falling to his knees, burning away, when suddenly a portal opens up behind her and John Constantine steps out. All right, let's kick an equation in the ass, he snaps as his team follows him. This team is known as the Shadow Pact. The Blue Devil, a demon with a soul, strong, also impervious to damage. He launches himself, stabbing demons on his pitchfork. Ragman, drawing on the corrupted souls within his cloak for speed and strength, he leaps into the crowd of undead, his rags nearly useless at pulling souls out of the anti-life. Their leader, Detective Chimp, Bobo, able to tear people's arms off. Rose Wilson is among the blighted, swinging her dual swords, chopping people's heads off. And then there's Red Hood. Batman if he wasn't so squeamish. His twin pistols firing, taking out the blight with deadly precision. John continues to fight, hitting the creatures with magic as he asks Zatanna to deal with fire. Done, she nods, leaping into the air. But she stops, waiting for the blighted superhero to rush at her. As fire is rushing, she suddenly raises her hand, casting a spell with her backward speech. Un monde fool, she snaps, and fire's flames suddenly extinguish, and the former hero falls from the sky, splatting hard against the side of a building. On the ground, John is trying to introduce himself to the survivors when suddenly Swamp Thing is behind him. Bloody hell! He snaps as Swamp Thing growls his name. I need to talk to you about a garden, Swamp Thing tells the wizard. But John waves his hand for another spell, pointing out that they are fighting a horde of the undead. Swamp Thing grunts, when suddenly vines begin to grow out of the earth, wrapping around and stabbing all the blighted ones that surround them. And in a matter of seconds, all of the anti-life creatures are dead, and John admires the handiwork. See, why didn't you just open with that? He asks. Swamp Thing steps forward, telling John that he has sensed a second garden of survivors in Australia. I'm not going to Australia, mate. That place is dangerous before the undead. I'm not going to survive the undead only to step on a stonefish and have my brain eaten by a drop bear, John tells him. But Swamp Thing rises up, vines and thorns coming out of his body. Shut the hell up! He snarls, and everyone stares shocked that Swamp Thing swore. That's new, Zatanna points out. Yeah, kind of proud of that. John agrees. Swamp Thing tells John that he is cut off from the second garden, that it is screaming in pain and he can't ignore it any longer. John nods, telling the hero to do what he has to do. There are humans there, and if you would like to save them from what I have to do, I believe you should come with me, Swamp Thing tells him. John finally nods, ordering Red Hood and Ravager to take the survivors back to the garden in Gotham. Later, the group enters the vast garden that Gotham City has become, and standing at the entrance is one Harley Quinn greeting them. She looks at the survivors, saddened that she sees only Rose and Jason. No Zatanna, John, Danny, Rory, not Bobo, that beautiful hat-wearing chimpanzee. She gasps, but Rose just tells her that they're all going to Australia. I was not expecting that answer, Harley notes. The Gotham Garden has become the safest place on Earth now, with Ivy's garden magically augmented by the Tower of Fate. Inside, Ivy looks up. Something warns her that there is something arriving. She yells for Mary and Kent Nelson. Shazam! Mary yells, becoming Mary Marvel, and the two leap into the air. Over the city, they're met by Cassie, who clutches a wounded John Kent in her arms, his blood soaking both of them. Help us, please, he won't stop bleeding. She begs them. They reach out with Dr. Fate telling her that his wounds are magical. It's okay, you can let him go, Mary tells her. Inside of the garden, Dinah puts down Damien's ship with Batman exiting to find Jason Todd and Cassandra Cain. Jason! Cass! You're alive! He shouts joyfully, and Jason looks at him in the suit. And you're Batman now, Jason asks. Bruce said he would want me to have it. Are you okay with it? Damien explains defensively. Jason looks at his brother. Our father made a lot of bad decisions, and then he pulls Damien in for a hug. This isn't one of them. Ivy looks up as Dinah descends, keeping the blighted Oliver Queen in a Green Lantern bubble. No, he does not enter. We have kept the anti-life equation out for 5 years. You think I'd allow someone to just walk in here with an infection? I won't leave him alone, Dinah tells Ivy. Then you leave here with him. You fend for yourself. I will not risk the lives of all the people here so that you can cling to a corpse, Ivy tells her, the ground rumbling at her feet as the vines begin to extend towards Dinah Lance. But the Green Lantern leaps into the air, beginning to fly away. Then we will go, she says simply. Ivy points out that the man is already dead. But that's when the head of Cyborg speaks up, explaining that there is a cure. That the blighted Wonder Woman told him that it was within him. Dr. Fate nods. I have access to science and magic, and now we have hope. We'll find the cure. Cassie begins to walk away from the group, tears in her eyes, Damien following, asking what's wrong. She quickly explains that she had to mourn Wonder Woman. Seeing her like that was just too much. To watch her lose twice like this, she tells him, beginning to break down. I know, I'm sorry. Whatever you need, I'm here for you, Damien tells her, pulling off his mask and wrapping his arms around her, pulling her in for a kiss. Meanwhile, in Australia, the Shadow Pact looks at the garden. It's a bunker surrounded by a ring of fire, a moat of blood, and 1,000 undead. John nods at the horrific sight, telling Zatanna that if she can hover them over the river of blood, he can get them to the ring of fire. You know, I just want to point out that we could just go home, put our feet up, maybe have a beer, Blue Devil points out. The group begins to hover over the undead, and after a few moments, the moat of blood is beneath them. But something catches Ragman's eye. The blood moat, it's shifting, he tells the others. It's not blood! Bobo yells, fear in his voice. It's Plastic Man! The undead shapeshifter lashes out, sharpening points of his body, and they begin to stab into the heroes. They pierce Ragman. They stab out Zatanna's eyes and then stab down her throat. They snake inside of the Blue Devil, piercing his impenetrable skin from the inside. And with their spell gone, Bobo and John plummet downwards into the seething mass that is the blighted Plastic Man. The mass begins to shift again, becoming rows of razor-sharp teeth and flailing tentacles. Meanwhile, from the shadows of the bunker, a group watches on. Zatanna wakes up with Bobo looking down on her. Are you an agent of the unliving? John asks as he helps her sit up. She shakes her head. Good, he nods, and they quickly fill her in on what happened, explaining that Blue Devil gave his life to save her. John tells her that they are currently inside a ball of vines and weeds while the blighted Plastic Man is trying to get in. Zatanna stands up, putting on her top hat and ordering Swamp Thing to lower the green. She leaps into the air and the monstrous Plastic Man begins to rear its attack at her as she flies through. Using her magic, she takes control of the hellfire around the bunker, burning Plastic Man to death. The group moves through the debris, finding their dead allies, and suddenly Bobo screams for them all to get down as the guns on the side of the bunker open fire at the incoming horde of the undead. The bullets stop the advancing horde, and John looks up from the ground as a voice calls out to them. If you're planning on coming in, this is your window, Cobblepot calls out to them. Meanwhile, back in Gotham City, Damian Wayne, who is the new Batman, has had a reunion with Jim Gordon, but is interrupted as Dr. Fate arrives telling him that Superman has recovered. Inside the Tower of Fate, John awakens to Crypto wagging his tail and licking his face. He looks over at Mary Marvel, who sits by his side. You look familiar, John tells her, and with the utterance of a magic word, she transforms into Mary Marvel. After introduction, she explains what happened to John and how she was able to patch him up. Thank you, John tells her with a smile. Meanwhile, over at the southern bunker, Cobblepot, Maxwell Lord, and Professor Ivo give the remains of the Shadow Pack a tour of their home. They explained that they have soldiers and guards who work as the cooking and cleaning staff. Swamp Thing still isn't happy though as he hears the Green crying out, and John is shocked to discover that Jason Blood has also found his way into the bunker. The Ancient Knight asks to speak with John in private, and once they're alone, he transforms into Etrigan. Before you start, could we please skip with the rhyming? John asks him quickly, and Etrigan stands before the sorcerer explaining that hell isn't happy because the souls of the living are trapped in the Blighted Ones. Trigun is coming to wipe it all away. Etrigan warns, and he explains that even though the rich villains in this place are planning a new human race, it wouldn't matter because Trigon is coming to destroy the world. Sure, heard it before, John scoffs. Their conversation interrupted as gunfire erupts from another part of the bunker. John rushes in to discover that Swamp Thing is attacking the bunker's guards, one of the last bastions of human beings that have survived, and Swamp Thing is trying to attack them. They've imprisoned the Floronic Man. They're torturing him. He's forcing the Green to produce for them, Zatanna quickly explains. John steps forward, trying to calm Swamp Thing, but the Guardian of the Green isn't listening as he orders the men to release the Floronic Man. One of them refuses and Swamp Thing pops his head off. Bobo turns his head, hearing Cobblepot tell Ivo that it is time, when suddenly a Mazo launches into the room, lasers shooting out of his eyes. The heat vision hits Swamp Thing, burning into him. Zatanna tries to stop the android with a spell, but more of them suddenly fly into the room. Z, they have more than one, John warns, and he creates a portal, and despite Swamp Thing's arguments, the group leaps into it as John promises that they'll return with a plan. The rich villains stand by, noting that the group will return. It doesn't matter. We'll take this world soon, Cobblepot tells them as they walk down the hallway, observing their army of Amazos. The next day, the group is listening as Cyborg explains that the cure is in his programming somewhere. They question him, but he tells them that he has been searching all of his coding and he can't find it anywhere. Death could have just been lying, Harley notes, but Cassie informs them that if Vic was using the lasso of truth, Wonder Woman couldn't lie. So after hearing everything, John stands ready. They know that there is in fact a cure somewhere out there. We're gonna find the cure and we're gonna save them all, he tells the group, and they begin to work through the problem, with Damian noting that if there is an anti-life equation, then there must be a life equation. Bobo adds that possibly the New Gods might know something about it. Hearing this, John tells them that he thinks he knows what they need, but it means doing something that he really doesn't want to do, bothering someone who probably prefers to stay unbothered. So a short time later, John and Bobo appear before an old cabin. The door opens, and they reveal a man in the shadows. How did you find me? World's greatest detective, John says, motioning at Bobo. Mr. Miracle steps out demanding to know what John wants, and he tells Scott that there is a way to save everyone, to save Barda. But Scott becomes angry, demanding to know how he could possibly believe John after last time. Ask me, John tells him, holding up Cassie's lasso of truth. There's a cure, Scott. We can save her, John tells him. Scott stares at him for a moment before asking what John needs him to do. First up, take a bath or a shower. Then, we need your help in stealing the throne of a god, John tells him. Meanwhile, over in Gotham Garden, Kid Flash stands ready, warning the others as a boom tube begins to open up. They stand prepared for a fight, but it's John Constantine, Bobo the Chimp, and Mr. Miracle that step out. Batman appears behind the wizard, frightening him as he asks why he would open up a boom tube straight into the garden. A short time later, the group discusses the plan. John believes that the Mobius chair would have the answer for how Vic needs to access the cure that is buried in his programming. They've all agreed that it would be impossible to catch Metron and that they need to lure him someplace. Metron prizes knowledge above all else, Batman tells them. John nods, believing that Madame Xanadu's crystal ball and the ability to see the future should be enough to bring Metron to them. This could work, Scott tells them. I'll take Cyborg to New Genesis, because I don't know how you'll be greeted. You'll be greeted with friends at your side, Superman simply states. He looks around telling them that anyone who could deal with space should come, when suddenly he realizes that Dinah isn't in the group. Stepping up, Harley fills him in on how Dinah left with the zombie Oliver because Poison Ivy would not let him into the garden. I'll find her, John says, leaping into the air, being the Superman that you would expect him to be, and Mary Marvel joins him, telling him that there are dangers in the world that he doesn't even know about. So they find Dinah sitting on a rooftop in the rain, the water mingling with the tears in her eyes. She leaps up when she sees John, hugging him with joy. "Are you planning on sitting out here alone?" Mary asks her as they sit next to her on the building. But Dinah explains that she isn't alone, and up floats the blighted Oliver before them. "I promised I'd bring him back," she tells them simply. And John explains that there is a cure, and that they're going to need her help. When Dinah tells them that she keeps Oliver, Mary offers to sneak him into the garden to be protected by Dr. Fate. So a short time later, they bid their friends and loved ones goodbye as the group steps through the boon tube with scot-free, and they appear in New Genesis, quickly greeted by Orion. "What the hell are you doing here? You would walk into New Genesis with the anti-life equation," Orion demands as he points at Vic. Mr. Miracle tries to argue, but Orion punches him across the face. "Stand!" he orders. "Standing," Scott says, blood on his face as he struggles to his feet, and Orion hits him again. And they repeat this process until John steps in. "Leave him alone," he says, punching Orion hard enough to knock a god down. "And stay down," John orders him as he towers over the god. Highfather approaches, once again seeing his sons fighting. And quickly the group explains that there is a cure for the anti-life zombie equation. They might be able to save everyone. "Highfather, we need the Mobius chair. Will you call out to Metron?" Scott asks his father. Highfather explains that Metron does what Metron wishes. Even with their offering, he might not give up the Mobius chair willingly. "But I will call Metron," his father promises his son. Later, Mr. Miracle hovers in the dead of space that was once the planet Apocalypse. He holds Madame Xanadu's crystal ball in his hands. "He's coming. Everyone get ready," John tells the group on the radio. And in a blur of motion, Metron appears before Scott. "Highfather said you have an object for me? Something to see the future?" Metron asks, not bothering with a greeting. He reaches for the crystal, believing that he can use it to see the disaster that approaches, but his arm is suddenly shackled by the Green Lantern. The heroes leap in at him, ambushing him, trying to wrestle the giant away from his chair. But quickly he overpowers them, tossing them aside. Metron then steps aboard his chair once more, quickly escaping into space. Mary and John fly as fast as they can, trying to catch up. "Wait, please!" John calls out, and as Metron slows, John floats before him. He explains that they didn't want to fight, but that they only need his chair for a moment, and the god stops, and he stares at them as they explain what is happening on Earth. They explain the anti-life equation zombies, they explain that there is a cure, they explain that he alone can help them save the universe. "I don't care," he tells them simply, but Mary has the wisdom of Solomon. "If we fail to contain this and death wins, what happens to knowledge?" she asks him, and Metron stares at them for a moment. "You should have opened with that instead of an ambush," he tells them. Metron agrees to let them use the chair if he can look into the crystal ball. "There is something I have seen in the future, but I know not how it begins," he tells them. With their agreement made, Vic sits in the chair, and energy crackles as the endless knowledge floods into his mind. "Vic, do you know about the cure?" Vic nods. "I need to recode my blood. The life equation is there," he tells them. John tries to thank Metron for his help, but the god is barely listening. He tells him that he must go, and he quickly flees in the Mobius chair. He took one look into the future and hurried away, Dinah whispers. And as the heroes return to Earth, they are unaware of the Black Racer's presence. He is sitting and watching as one of the asteroids from Apocalypse begins to quake and glow, and suddenly it explodes, revealing the death within. Darkseid roars in rage and madness, and in New Genesis, the Highfather turns and sees the fire that falls from the sky. He yells a warning to the others as he hears his son screaming from outside the gate, "Father!" Orion yells as the Highfather rushes forward, and the unliving Darkseid is already among them. With the most powerful heroes remaining on a quest to obtain the Mobius chair, John Constantine made his move. He stands in front of a room in the Tower of Fate. When Dr. Fate appears, the magical hero looks at the door, questioning John about what's on the other side. "What's in this room? Why can't I see inside?" he questions. Because the door is closed," John quips. Fate glares at Constantine, demanding to know what he keeps here. "Oh, you know, a rack of identical trench coats," John tells him as he takes a drag of his cigarette. But Fate will not be deterred, as he demands to know why he can't enter the room, but John holds out his hand and the doorknob magically appears. He slips inside, looking back at the doctor. Look, don't worry about it. This is the Tower of Fate, so whatever is in here is clearly meant to be in here. Otherwise, you'd have to rename the place. John closes the door and steps inside. He turns to find the demon Etrigan waiting for him. Why have you summoned me, you sad Merlin wannabe? The demon asks, and John shakes his head, asking for an update on Hell. How long until Trigon comes? He questions. You should fear. He'll be here soon, Etrigan intones. John shakes his head, asking for a straight answer. He's pretty pissed. I say 3 turns until all life and non-life on this world burns. John nods, glancing at the shadows, asking Swamp Thing if he's heard enough. And Swamp Thing nods and Etrigan leaves. The Australian garden still cries out. Swamp Thing rumbles. John tells his friend that he'll deal with the Australians and looks at Ragman's cloak. I'll need to if this is going to work, John tells him. And as the two step out of the room, Dr. Fate asks Swamp Thing what the room holds. A rack of coats, Swamp Thing says simply, and John laughs. As they cross through the garden, John tells Alec that they'll need a few people who don't mind dealing punishment. Are you as good as your old man? John says as he stops in front of Batman, currently Damian Wayne. Not yet, Damian admits. John explains that they need to do some questionable things. And I need to do them while Mary Marvel is a galaxy away, and I need a team to keep me alive. I can't say more, but it's for the good of the world and all that, John tells the young Batman, but Damian shakes his head, telling him that his reason isn't good enough. You don't trust me? John asks. I mean, of course not, Damian says simply, demanding the whole truth from John, and he lets him know that he'll know if John is lying. Constantine curses when he realizes that Damian is like his old man, and then he decides to tell him the plan. No one will die that isn't already dead. John finishes with it, and he leads him over to the rest of the team, and Damian smiles at Jason and Cassandra. A bad family trip with the Ravager and Swamp Thing, he says. Actually, Rose and I are married, Jason tells him. So she's family too, Cassandra confirms. Damian brings them both in for a hug and tells them how happy he is for them. John explains to the group that he and Swamp Thing's souls are joined so he can bring them through the green. Moments later, Alec pulls himself out of a stand of trees looking out over Nanda Parbat. That's a lot of anti-life, Jason notes as they come out of the portal and he draws his pistols. If there's a cure, we can't kill them, Cassandra tells them. But the heroes leap into the approaching army of undead ninja assassins, and as he fires, Jason asks Rose what they should do when they reach the gate. We knock politely, she tells him simply as her blades cut through another ninja. Get the blighted ones off me, she yells as she moves towards the door. Of course, keeping the undead off of each other was in our vows. Jason nods as he keeps firing. Rose knocks on the door and it opens with a squeak. Deadman floats out, greeting them. Welcome, my friends. Welcome to Nanda Parbat, he shouts as the warriors of Nanda Parbat flood out and begin to attack the ninjas. Follow me. Would you like something to drink? Maybe some snacks? He asks as he floats back into the city. Inside, John Constantine discovers the Spear of Destiny, which has been guarded for centuries. Is that what you've come for, Hellblazer? Ramakrishna asks him. He reaches forward, but Ramakrishna explains that she will protect him and his friends, but never allow the Holy Spirit to be taken from this place. And John lowers his head. I know, I'm sorry, he whispers as he whirls on her, stabbing the spear through Ramakrishna's chest. No, why? Deadman shouts as he flies towards them. I've never felt a need to explain myself to dead men, John tells him as he pulls out Ragman's cloak. He holds it up and the magical quilt pulls in Boston Brand's soul. The others rush over questioning him, but John doesn't answer, telling them that they're leaving. You stabbed a goddess, Jason shouts as they step through the portal. But John shakes his head and tells Jason that she'll heal in a couple thousand of years. But she never would have let me take this, he says, holding up the spear. Damian looks around, questioning where Swamp Thing has brought them. The Rock of Eternity, the Guardian of the Green rumbles before explaining that they need the wizard. They need Shazam's staff. Are you planning on stabbing him with it? Jason asks. But suddenly, Rose stops and her eyes widen. She pulls free her pistol out of fear. Get us out of here, Constantine, she orders, raising that pistol, firing at the bolt of lightning that suddenly shoots across the room. The bullets don't even slow Captain Marvel Jr. down as he slams into Jason Todd, breaking the troubled hero in half. Swamp Thing's tendrils grasp the former hero as Damian launches explosives at him. Rose goes to her husband, pulling off his helmet, and she pauses briefly to throw a knife behind her, killing the wizard before he can attack. Freddy continues to fight as John orders the others to find the staff. Cassandra reaches forward, but doesn't hesitate when she shouts the magic word. Shazam! She bellows, transforming before their very eyes. She launches herself at Freddy. Cassandra was the greatest hand-to-hand fighter left on the planet, and the young boy didn't stand a chance. Rose eases her husband against the wall, apologizing for not being able to stop what she foresaw. Hey, it's okay. He smiles at her, blood in his mouth. I've died before. I'm not so afraid this time. I was just lucky. I got a second life, and my second life was with you. He tells her softly, and she kisses him as he passes from this life. They return to the garden, and Rose demands that John promise her that this was worth it. I promise that this is the only way, and if I'm wrong, well, we'll all be too dead to notice. As the others walk away, Damien walks over and reminds John what he told him about their mission. I told you I wouldn't kill anyone that wasn't already dead, John reminds him. Batman cracks the wizard across the jaw, dropping him to the ground, and John watches as the young man walks away. You deserved that. A ghostly voice whispers to John, and he turns to see Spectre floating behind him. Oh, what a shock. The ghost of wrath thinks I deserve a punch to the face, John quips. Spectre leans forward, telling John that he is capable of stopping what he is doing. I know, Jim, John says, lighting a fresh cigarette. He looks at the Spectre, telling the spirit of vengeance to use a little insight. What do you think I'm motivated by? John asks, and the Spectre smiles at him and flies away. Good night, John. In Australia, Penguin leans over the table, asking Professor Ivo once more if the Amazos are ready. Very nearly, Ivo informs him. Anger swells up in Cobblepot, and Ivo reminds them that one wrong calculation and Amazos will kill them as well. Penguin continues to yell, and suddenly two of the androids appear behind him, their eyes glowing menacingly. Considering I am the sole survivor of a superpowered, artificially intelligent army that can destroy the very planet that you're standing on, maybe you should review your tone. I will be done soon. The undead can wait a little longer. Meanwhile, over in Gotham Garden, Cyborg finishes recording his blood to the life equation. John nods, leaning down to pet Crypto, asking what their next step is, but Cyborg isn't actually sure how to turn the equation into a cure. If only we had the world's greatest biochemist with us, Damian notes as he tries to play fetch with Ace, and he leaves them to go speak with Swamp Thing. Little Batman, I am sorry about Jason. He seemed like a good being, Alec rumbles. Damian expresses his appreciation and then tells Alec that he wants Jason to be the last lost from this virus. And for that, we're going to need Alec Holland, Damian tells him. But Swamp Thing shakes his head, explaining that even Alec Holland can't create the cure on his own. Damian agrees and tells him that the man wouldn't be alone. So, a short while later, they're all brought together, linked by the green with Dr. Fate's telepathic abilities. Nobel Prize-winning Alec Holland, Pamela Isley, former doctor of toxicology, Vic Stone infused with the technology of two worlds, Mary Marvel, wisdom of Solomon, Harley Quinn, former doctor of psychology and medicine, Wallace West, the fastest mind on the planet, Detective Chimp, the world's greatest problem solver, and Batman, because he's Batman. With these minds linked together, it wasn't long until Cyborg was standing before the survivors. I think I have the cure, he tells them. We can save them all, Superman nods. But at that time, the Amazo androids were released, and they cut a swath of anti-life destruction across the world. Cyborg had developed the cure, telling the others that they needed to test it. Green Canary nodded her head. Ollie, she said simply. But Mr. Miracle steps in, explaining that it should be Big Barda. Dyna grows angry, but Scott explains that if something goes wrong, Barda might be strong enough to survive. We shouldn't risk Ollie, he explains. So they've removed a sliver of Canary's magic sword to create a needle strong enough to pierce Barda's skin and stepped through a boom tube. The team arrived on a small moon near Alpha Centauri. It was the safest place I could think of, Scott explains to them, and he leads them to a crater where he keeps her chained up, but fear shows in his eyes. Oh no, she escaped, he whispers. Canary whirls around at the last second as Barda comes plunging down upon them. She slams Scott into the ground with a bellow of rage. Superman, do it! Scott yells as Barda raises her fist to beat the man that she loves. And John moves at super speed, plunging the needle into Barda's neck. She bellows with rage again, raising her fist once more, and John's eyes glow red as he prepares to attack, but Scott yells for them not to hurt her. Suddenly, intelligence returns once more to Barda's eyes, and she looks down at her husband. Scott? She whispers, looking at him with fear, questioning where they are and where their son is. He's safe. He's on New Genesis. We'll go to him. We just have to save the Earth first, Scott tells his wife with a smile. Meanwhile, over in the Tower of Fate, John Constantine pulls off the cloak that was trying to attack his soul. Yes, cloak, I know my wicked soul belongs in you, but give it a rest, will you? He curses. Suddenly, the door to his secret room explodes inward and Zatanna steps inside. Hello, Z. John greets her, but she's angry and demands to know what he has done. She looks around at the magical weapons that John has gathered and asks what is he planning. Now, can you trust me? John asks her, but Z shakes her head. Of course not, I've known you too long, she tells him. John nods, telling her that he's going to do things, but will need her help. If I tell you what I'm going to do, you'll try to stop me, he explains. And he suddenly glances at the door, telling Zatanna that he spent years hiding this place from Dr. Fate. You just left the door open so that anyone could walk in? He curses as Phantom Stranger steps out of the darkness. The stranger steps forward, telling John that he must not continue down this path. The world ends if I step off this path, John explains, and the stranger looks at Zatanna, asking John if she knows everything that he's done. Without an answer, he begins to list off everything that John has done recently. I chose to do those things I didn't want to do because they had to be done. John snaps at the Phantom Stranger, asking if he's really judging him after what he did to get cursed for all eternity. How dare you! The stranger yells, tossing John across the room, but the wizard recovers fast, reaching for the Spear of Destiny. Try it! He dares the ghostly hero. Suddenly, a pillar of fire appears in the room and out steps Jason Blood. Constantine, we have to talk, Blood tells John. He tells the wizard that Trigon will step foot on the earth in a matter of moments and the world will burn. Elsewhere in the garden, the strike team returns to Earth with a cured Big Barda. Any trouble? Damien asks. Well, she did try to kill us a bit, John explains. And Cyborg is ecstatic with the results, knowing that they can bring everyone back with the cure. But John reappeared to ruin everyone's day. He tells them about the Amazo army. John wanted to rush out to fight them, but Damien convinced them that they needed a plan. So they planned, and if they cure the people as they went, the Amazos wouldn't have anyone to attack. Wallace moved fast. He read everything that he could find on production in a blur of motion. 10 minutes later, he was an expert. He moved to the Magnus labs where they began to create the cure. 3 billion people could be cured with the first batch that rolled off the line. But that number began to drop fast because Trigon appeared on Earth at 10 p.m. The blighted ones of Paris surged towards him, and he struck them. 15 minutes later, the city of Paris had been purged. The devil came to scorch the earth, and in the tower they all felt the deaths. John finally brought Dr. Fate to see what was behind the door, and he asked Zatanna to wait outside, and inside, Fate saw what John had collected. Doctor, I'm going to need your helmet and amulet, John explains as he puts on the cloak. Suddenly, the Phantom Stranger steps forward, stabbing Fate with the Spear of Destiny, explaining that Constantine showed him the future. You would prevent what needs to happen, the stranger explains, and Fate falls to his knees, telling the group that he will not relinquish the helmet. It cannot be removed by your magic, Constantine, he tells John. John tells him, oh, we know. He steps forward to the Staff of Shazam, placing his hand on Fate's helmet, uttering the magic word, Shazam! The lightning strikes and the helmet was removed as John was magically charged. He holds out his hands, summoning Naboo's amulet. I don't understand. You have to have a pure heart to harness the wizard's power, Kent Nelson grasps. Yeah, I have one. Just don't ask where I got it, John tells him. Zatanna suddenly steps back into the room and she is shocked by the wounded Kent Nelson. Phantom Stranger and Etrigan are standing with a magically powered John. I'm not gonna lie, this is exactly as bad as it looks, John admits to her, and he tells her not to worry, that Fate will live. She steps towards him, asking if he'll return. Hey, it's me, he tells her with a smile. That's not an answer, she tells him, and John smirks, reminding her that she is the only person on the planet that he doesn't want to disappoint. They kiss gently in those last moments, and with a crack of lightning, John flies out of the Tower of Fate, rocketing towards Trigon. Ready or not, world, I'm coming to save you. It all begins in Brisbane, Australia, where the main swarm of Amazo androids spread like locusts, brutally ending the unliving. Unstoppable killing machines programmed to wipe out all anti-life on Earth, each strong enough to face the entire Justice League. But this wasn't the Justice League that they were built for. These were warriors, wielders of the living lightning, the greatest trained fighters on the planet, holders of the most powerful weapons in the universe, and literal gods. A desperate last line of defense, risking everything to protect the anti-living from the artificially intelligent. They have the cure. They need to stop the androids. So as the Justice League fought the Amazos, the Phantom Stranger and Zatanna traveled to Paris to join John Constantine in a fight against Trigon, only to find that John hasn't shown up for the fight. Trigon stops for a moment from his spread of destruction and looks at the Phantom Stranger asking, "Shouldn't you be walking forever in limbo? You're not supposed to choose a side." But while that fight gets ready to take place, over in the Australian garden, the source of the Amazo army, the Super Sons, travel to take them out remotely. John looks out at the burning remains of the infected, stating that they could have saved them. They didn't have to die. Damian tells him that the people inside couldn't have known that there was a cure. Not to sound callous, but we can't stop for the dead. Before John could react, he is struck hard across the face, and Damian calls out to his friend, but at that moment, an Amazo crashes down, barely missing him. While John holds the android in place, Damian leaps up, placing a small device on the Amazo's head, and a second later, it electrocutes it. The Australian bunker has proven impenetrable for 5 years, but its residents tried to kill Superman's best friends, so that was about to change. A few seconds later, the walls of the bunker explode, and John walks in holding the Amazo's head, asking, "Where is Professor Ivo? We need to stop these things." Penguin walks up telling him, "No, that won't be happening. We've planned our personal oasis here long before the virus struck. Do you think that there isn't a measure to kill a Superman? Guards!" But as Penguin points his umbrella, the guards remain still, and Penguin asks, "What are you waiting for?" The guards look down from their post, telling him, they are not hurting Superman. Before Penguin could argue, he begins to choke, and all of a sudden, all of the residents inside falls to the ground. Damian asks what is going on. However, it was all according to plan. Outside, Constantine is using Ragman's cloak to absorb all of the corrupt souls, and Constantine knew exactly where to find the most corrupt ones still on Earth to power up his abilities. Superman flies out asking what he's doing, and Constantine pulls back Dr. Fate's helmet, telling him, "It's okay. The cloak only targets the truly evil. If they were taken, then they deserved it. Besides, I'm going to need them to deal with some certain doom out there. You know, take out a demon who could otherwise destroy the planet." Superman asks if there's anything he can do, but Constantine tells him, "Nah, I've seen the future and Superman didn't make it. So just worry about saving everyone else." Superman tells him that he's a good man, but Constantine shrugs, telling him, "Not really, but it's nice to hear Superman say it." As Constantine takes off, back inside, Damian sees that Ivo has already been killed prior to Constantine's arrival. So John and Damian take the Amazo head to the only other person that might be able to help them get into the android's head, Cyborg. Damian explains that they're looking to see if they can figure out how the transmitters work, and through that, they want to try and infect their systems. Cyborg asks, "Are you suggesting we give the Amazo army a virus?" And Damian says, "That's exactly what we're suggesting." And John tells him, "And while we're working on it, me and Flash will move as fast as we can to administer the cure ahead of the Amazos." So the two suit up, with Flash stating, "I'm North and South America. That leaves you for Europe and Africa." As John flies over to Europe, there are things that his telescopic eyes couldn't ignore. Back in Paris, Trigon slams his foot down on the Phantom Stranger, telling him, "You should have stayed out of this." While Zatanna lays defeated, Constantine teleports in and helps her up, telling her that he needs her to do a couple of things. First, hold the spear. Second, I need you to tell me that I can do this, Z. With Zatanna's blessing, Constantine walks to Trigon, telling him that as much as he'd like to see the Phantom Stranger get trodden on, he's gonna need to let that man up. Trigon laughs. "Well, if it isn't John Constantine, oh, the eternity of torment that awaits you in hell! The never-ending nightmare that will..." Constantine stops him. "Oh, will you shut up already?" And with the speed of Mercury, paired with the power of Zeus and the strength of Hercules, enhanced by all of the Lords of Order and 100 angry souls, Constantine strikes. In short, Constantine just decked a giant demon. He uses everything at his disposal. The wisdom of Solomon matches with the dirty tricks of a lifetime of avoiding fights. Madame Xanadu's crystal ball to see the future seconds before it happens, and even creatures from other dimensions, but it wasn't enough. With one fiery punch, Trigon buries Constantine into the ground, leaving him a bloody mess. Zatanna runs over to help him, but Constantine smiles, telling her, "Goodbye." And it was at that moment that things began to look bleak. The heroes were losing, the Amazos were overwhelming with their power, and just when all was lost, Cyborg did it. He infected the Amazo systems, and all across the world, the androids began to fall out of the sky. And that's when Superman showed up. He told Trigon to stop. Trigon says that he just killed a being connected to the most powerful magics in the universe. I will not stop. Constantine has seen the future. He knew that Superman would die if he faced Trigon, but Superman was faster than fate, stronger than the inevitable. As John charged in, Zatanna watched, and then she heard a faint laugh behind her. She looked back to see the ghost of Constantine asking how. And Constantine tells her, yeah, I'm a dead man. It sucks, but this is part of the plan. I wasn't being a real shite when I took Boston Brand's power. All that magic that I stole, he's still connected to it. And right now, I'm the most powerful dead man ever to be seen, which also means I can do this. Constantine flies up and into Trigon's head. Trigon falls to his knees, telling Constantine to get out of his head. But within a few seconds, Trigon begins to shrink in size, and through Trigon, Constantine says that he's going to need that spear. Trigon asks what's he going to do, and Constantine laughs, just a little something. Calmly, he takes the spear, stabbing it into Trigon and his very soul. Zatanna rushes over asking why did he do that, and Constantine says that his soul was set for an eternity of torment. Just disappearing, well, that's gonna make a lot of demons in hell very, very annoyed. But if there's one thing that he can say before going, it's that he's going to miss all of this. With the looming threat of Trigon and the Amazers taken care of, the heroes now had a chance to help Flash continue giving the unliving the cure. They spread across the world, they rid the unliving infection, and in the end, they were able to cure 2 billion people. Some including friends, leaders, and even family. So many that were lost were found again, and they managed to bring them all back. And there you have it. Thank you so much for sticking around today. I don't think this was as long as some of our full stories, but make sure you check back next Monday for the next full story. And also, don't forget to go head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Comicstorian, where you too can vote on the videos that are coming to the channel and help create the direction that Comicstorian is going in. Thank you so much for your continued support. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this video. And don't forget, if you watch to the end of the video, you are entitled to a Nern root. If you know what that is, let me know in the comments down below.